Welcome to the Codecast podcast. Real-world insights for your daily medical coding and billing processes. And now, here's your host, Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Codecast podcast today. My name is Terry Fletcher. So my Hawaiian vacation is definitely in the rearview mirror. You wonder why rearview mirrors are so small? It's because they're like, yeah, that was a memory, and now look at your windshield. It's the big one ahead of you. So here we are onward, but it was a very nice trip, and I'm happy to be back. I love my work, and I know there's a lot to cover. So here we go. But first, the Codecast podcast is brought to you today by Just Coding. This is your go-to resource for expert coding guidance, coding quizzes, and exclusive tools. Save $5 on your subscription today at hcmarketplace.com/justcoding-com and enter SAVE5 to take your coding to the next level. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Well, there's been a lot of conversation, I should say, about AI. I know I blogged on it recently. Well, probably not that recent, but recently enough that there's some things when it comes to artificial intelligence, and it's coming at us like a freight train, and not just implementation of AI into our electronic health records, but I'm getting a lot of questions from people about, can you tell me the best AI-based CAC, which is the computer-assisted coding? And I hate that, by the way, because I think it makes more errors than it's actually accurate. AI should be a tool that you use. It should not be in replace of an actual person reviewing and providing health information. The other thing with AI, again, artificial intelligence, just listen to the name of it, is that it gathers information, but it doesn't have necessarily decision-making qualities. So it spits out what it takes in. And with all of the implementation of AI into our electronic health records right now, I just can't help but continue to focus on the known lack of parameters, accountability, safeguards that have been set, or lack of safeguards that have been set around the use of basic smart tool functions that have now been integrated into EHRs for a long period of time, and what this really means for our future. So I've been reading a lot of articles on this. I've been watching what some of the problems with ChatGPT, for example, and their lawsuits that are happening. And again, I'm not trying to disparage a company. I'm just saying that AI has a lot of work to do to be perfect, and it's not yet. I actually like what Elon Musk is doing in his AIX or XAI, and he's trying to make it nonprofit because he wants the information to be non-biased. Once you start mixing money in there and making it for profit, it profits the people who are creating it. The other thing about, integrating AI into healthcare is that one of the things that I've noticed that it still seems to have is hallucinations. And what that means is, think about sending a text, and your iPhone or your Android, it tries to anticipate what you're going to say next. And sometimes I have to be careful and backspace, especially if I'm having an argument with my daughter, and say, no, that's probably mean. She'll be like, don't talk to me like that. So I have to backspace through things because you don't always know tone. Well, what happens a lot of times with electronic health records that are, I should say, supplemented or charged with AI is, for example, when you say ruptured, does it know Achilles? Does it think it's appendix? What does it actually think? And it tends to hallucinate, that's the best way I can say, or give you a prompt that it's what you use most often. So that's what's really, kind of scary there, because up to this point, medical coders and auditors, we've experienced many situations where providers using functions like, click and paste or click this button, and all of the active problems from a potential outdated list or previous list that's not well maintained. Doctors say they don't have time for that. They're expecting staff to do that. But if staff doesn't have, face-to-face with the patient all the time and they're not clinical, it can be integrated into your treatment plan to help the physician with their documentation. But even worse, they're using it for risk adjustment. And now I'm losing my mind when I see that. So it also, gives full allowance or full reign of copy paste into a progress note, opening doors to clinical plagiarism because it can use other providers' words and documentation, and they're passing it off as their own. And the other thing is I'm finding that some of the documentation results having a cloned appearance with little updated information for each individual date of service or encounter. And it drives me a little crazy because for those of you that are listening to this and are, internal auditors, external auditors out there, remember when all we had to complain about was the fact we couldn't read our doctor's writing, and then we had to say, you need to get a scribe. And that seemed to solve the problem for a while. And then in the early 90s, the electronic health records, EMRs came up, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, I guess auditing's going to stop because now it's going to look perfect. But now we're finding that between AI and other, technologically advanced implementations into these systems, they're now being advanced faster than we can keep up with making sure that they're safe, that they're accurate. And, at times I have clients that are already using this without fully understanding their responsibility. First of all, they have to inform patients that they're using it and why they need to be aware from not only a compliance perspective, but a HIPAA perspective. I had several, clients and non-clients email me and say, we have a problem. We found out we do have AI in our electronic health record. We weren't told that it was in there. We didn't get a signed consent from the patient, and the patient all of a sudden was getting marketing material for supplies and for supplements and for things that were talked about during their visit. And they want to know, who'd you share my information with without my permission? So, I'm the first one to admit I am not completely tech savvy. I have a good knowledge of it, and I do my research, and I even just recently took a side course at the Harvard Extension just to really try to fully understand some of the AI capabilities. And I was blown away by just how advanced it is, but also how inaccurate it can be. As a compliance expert, as an auditor, as an educator, past bad habits that have been continually seen, or typos or bad information or lack of updated information really seem to be coming forward into the AI electronic health records. And it's just like cut and paste. If it was bad to start with and now it's coming forward, now it's still going to be non-compliant. So without proper oversight, correction, review when it's needed, it's going to be a problem. I've seen more and more of my clients even use an AI scribe tool that are either provided at an additional cost by their electronic medical record vendor provider, or they're looking to purchase a standalone product and integrate it into their EMR. Well, some seem this is harmless. I was having a conversation about this, and I know Stephanie Allard, a good friend of mine, consultant, blogged about this as well. And, to have AI, so in order to have an AI describe an encounter, it has to be, and I'm going to quote, listening in on the visit so that it can transcribe conversations between providers and their patients. It summarizes the clinical content discussed, generates draft notes or summaries for the treating providers. So I have a problem with this, not just, again, HIPAA patient privacy, but ethical issues. So I've really started to have conversations with my clients and, other organizations that come to me for audits, and I've had a lot lately, and I've asked them to get legal representation because it's their responsibility to notify the patient of the use of AI tools in a scribe scenario when this AI tool is actively drafting your clinical information. There is also a need to consider the state that your organization is in and the AI laws that are continually being enacted, reviewed, and updated. And when we see some of the errors related to the talk and text software, how many notes have we read with contradictions, grammar errors, spelling errors, with a macro statement at the bottom saying, excuse the errors? Remember, you can't say that anymore. You can't say, dictated but not read. So unless you want to give, candy to a prosecutor, then they love that. They absolutely love seeing that. But that statement does not absolve any provider from submitting or continuing to have inaccurate notes. And this is sometimes what we're seeing with AI. There's proven scenarios of AI pulling inaccurate information, misdiagnosing patients on complaints, pulling in incorrect CPT and ICD-10 codes when coding, profiling patients, and applying biases. I've seen that recently. So what does this mean for patients that will now have AI documenting their clinical information for them, and with a known issue of providers rushing through charts due to the burden of high volume patients, excessive administrative tasks, and still trying to find time for work-life balance? Well, AI is not going away, and I'm definitely pushing back a little bit on it, but I think you have to really take a step back when you use AI as a tool to assist with job functions that you want to be automated. What concerns me is that there are organizations not taking the time to research and understand what is being implemented into your system. They're just blindly going along with massive EMR companies that are integrating it and taking their word for it. It's still the physician's responsibility. You still are responsible for overall compliance, security, safety. And it's unfortunate sometimes because when the new guidelines came out for E&M, for example, the 21 and then updated in 2023, one of the things they said, patients over paperwork. And so it was supposed to make it easier for physicians, so now they could spend more time with patients. But you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing that instead of seeing, up to 4 patients an hour, now they're seeing 6. And that's not what that was for. And now AI is trying to get physicians to see 8 to 10 an hour. So at the end of the day, when you think about overall compliance with documentation, the code selection, and the revenue cycle, it is the provider that you're taking on the majority of the risk. You are signing a record that is attesting to the documentation and with your NPI number on the claim, saying that these services were rendered and they're accurately being reported based on supporting documentation. You cannot say now anymore that, and you haven't been able to say this for about 8 years, that dictated but not read, or you can't blame it on somebody else. Basically, you can't just say, well, of course there's going to be some errors here, and I didn't get a chance to review it, or there might be errors or typos. That's not my fault. Yes, it is. So here's just a couple of things, and again, I thank Stephanie for this. She had a list of questions for physicians to prioritize and work through with their organizations. And I've added a couple here too, but I thought this was very helpful. First of all, is compliance aware of the AI tools, your compliance department or whoever handles your compliance, and what their capabilities are? Have you in your organization, even if you're a 1 physician practice or you are a 200 physician practice, have you included AI oversight into your compliance program and audit plan? You need to, because one of the things that the OIG did this year is they added on their compliance model, they added an extra 11th element, which was safety. Is your organization, if your organization has implemented AI scribe tools, are you notifying patients? Have they signed informed consent with their right to deny you're being able to use that? Remember, they have a right to deny it. Do your providers fully understand the risk if not used compliantly? And does your administrative team and providers understand how to integrate the tools into your existing documentation and coding guidelines? Okay, so those are things you have to ask yourself. We are happy to help if you need our help, but please be very cautious and be very careful when you step into the AI world. I know we are already knee-deep in it, but before it gets waist high, please take a look at that. Please make sure that you are erring on the side of safety for the patient, on privacy for the patient, and on consent for the patient. They have to know what it is that's being listened to or that's being used to document their encounters. And remember, no matter what, you are 100% responsible for anything generated. Okay, I hate to say that's my rant, but my soliloquy. That's my Codecast podcast for today. Hopefully everyone is having a good month of May. Pretty excited. The NFL schedule just came out, and yes, I'm returning to Hawaii in the fall. My husband's making me go twice this year, but it's fun because the fall is going to include my daughter and her husband. She has a week off as a teacher in October, and then also our nephew and his wife. So it'll be fun. So, just something to look forward to in about 5 months. But I hope everyone is getting some, time here and there. I know we have Memorial Day coming up. And so hopefully everyone's going to get a nice 3-day weekend. And I hope you have a really good rest of your May. And we're going to have a really good Top 10 Tuesday on the 27th download. So make sure you listen in as well there. So everyone, make it a great rest of your week. Make it a great day. And thank you for listening to the Codecast podcast.
For more information on medical coding, billing, auditing, and compliance, including how to hire Terry, follow Terry on Twitter @TerryCoder1 or visit her website at www.terryfletcher.net. Podcast producer Joe Kuzma. Music producer Dassassin Music.